Good afternoon to you. It's 5:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on this program, we'll be joined by the reporter for the Daily Caller News Foundation, Kate Anderson, with exclusive new reporting on the child mutilation industry, the documents and videos that they definitely didn't want you to see or hear. We've got them for you ahead. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump moments ago wrapping up yet another day in a New York City courtroom. Republican members of Congress and former presidential candidates all now showing up to support him. It wasn't always that way. Earlier this week, Senator Tommy Tuberville was among the first to show up in support of Trump there at that courthouse, and he joins us on the phone right now. Coach, good to have you back with us, sir.
Hey, Vince, how are you? I'm
doing just fine. How was your trip to New York yesterday?
You know, it was good. We went up for fundraising, but we also went up to be, not with just a Republican candidate and going to be the next president of the United States, Donald Trump, but as a friend. I mean, here's a guy that's been put in a cold, dark, dreary-looking courtroom, and they got a gag order on him. When we get there yesterday, they wouldn't let us talk to the media inside. That came straight from the judge. We had to go outside, but for several reasons: show support for him, but also be able to speak for him. Say, hey, this is what's going on. They're doing all this against him, holding him back from saying anything. But allowing Michael Cohen, all these other people to run their mouths. I mean, it's a weaponized judicial system. It's all predicated on just putting pressure on Donald Trump, trying to make him look bad. Mm-hmm. Here's a guy. I was sitting there with an open mind yesterday, so I go in. I sit there and listen to Michael Cohen, and he taped President Trump's conversations on his phone without telling President Trump. But not just his, other people's. I mean, and the guy even said on the stand, sometimes I lie to get my job done as a lawyer. And I'm thinking, if I'm the judge, I stop it right there going, okay, that's enough. If you're going to admit that you're lying, sometimes, try to get things done your way to try to be successful, this thing's over with.
Right.
Because he's been, he lied to Congress. He lied in another court system. He didn't pay his taxes, went to jail for a year, was let out on house arrest for 2 years. I mean, this guy's a criminal.
When he lied to his own client by his own admission, he was capturing audio of him and didn't reveal to his client that he was surreptitiously recording him and then disseminating the audio.
Yeah, and so we're sitting there, and they play the audio, but they had a script of the audio on screens around where you could read it, because sometimes you couldn't tell what they were saying. And I don't know why the prosecution did that, because it didn't have anything up there that was what made you think that Donald Trump broke any laws. I mean, it was just it pretty much telling the jurors, oh, by the way, I secretly, without telling my client as a lawyer, I taped his conversations, and now you're going to play it against him. I mean, whatever happened to lawyer-client privilege, where you could actually trust your lawyer? I mean, the Democrats are absolutely destroying everything that's been built over the years. And here's just another example of just going through the judicial system. They had over 20 defense attorneys, district attorneys in there yesterday. They were all assistants. Obviously, they prosecuted 3% of the crime in New York last year. The rest of them just went in the front door, out the back door. So they got nothing else to do. So they're all in there. This is their Super Bowl. They're going after the bad guy, Donald Trump. I mean, it made me sick at my stomach to see them all in there and, laughing and giggling. And it's supposed to be a closed courtroom, but they're all in there. I'm sure they're on TikTok and doing the things to make money off of Donald Trump, but it is what it is.
Well, Senator Tuberville, you said at the top of our conversation that you found the courtroom to be dreary. And I heard you say yesterday that it was very depressing inside of that room. Give us a sense of what you mean by that.
Well, the lighting was low. Everything in there was 100 years old, obviously, and that courtroom's been there forever. It's New York. Very little room. I mean, it was really cramped. They had cops every other step. I mean, there was security everywhere. And And I mean, you couldn't get within 4 blocks of that building. President Trump brought that up, said, look, they won't let even our people come here. You know, if they had other protesters coming protesting something else, I guarantee you they'd let them. But anybody that was supporting Donald Trump was not allowed to get within 4 blocks of that place. And it was cold when we first got in. Then it got hot. I mean, it's just a situation where you think they'd have a more comfortable sitting if people have to go in there and sit for weeks on end in terms of a trial. Don, this was the 17th day of this debacle.
Yeah.
And of course, this judge is, he knew we were coming, so he said, I don't want anybody to be able to do any interviews with the media in my courthouse. Wait a minute, what about the First Amendment? I mean, and so we had to go outside to talk to the media, and again, to get our point over.
So you were outside. The camera position is outside of the courtroom. So he's saying that in the entire building, you're not allowed to talk to the press?
Yeah, we couldn't. Well, the press was in one area, and we couldn't talk to them. So obviously, in the building, there weren't anywhere else. We had to go outside, and I forget what that park is, Lafayette Park or something like that. Mm-hmm. We had to go out into that park and do the interviews about 100 yards away. But it's all set up.
Well, it sounds like what you're describing, that courtroom, it sounds like it's meant to suck the spirit out of any human who goes in there.
Yeah, and we went back on the breaks and had lunch with President Trump, and listened to the lawyers and talking about what they had just gone through for the last couple of hours, and it's a dump. You can tell most everything in there, but again, it's old New York, but to have to spend 4 or 5 weeks into that place, and 6, 7, 8 hours a day, I can't believe these jurors. I watched the jurors. There were 15 jurors, 3 of them are alternates, and it's got to be uncomfortable for them, to have to go in there and listen to all that. But again, that's our system. Got to go through it. Again, it's just a situation where I'm sure they want to make it as tough as they possibly can on President Trump and the people that work for him. But hopefully, it backfire on them.
How did you find Judge Juan Merchan's demeanor yesterday as you were measuring him up?
Yeah, I never seen him before. He never even looked really at President Trump. But they all called him Mr. Trump. It really made me mad because if you address somebody that had been a president. I know you call him President Obama, President Carter, President Reagan. Here they call him Mr. Trump. Everybody on their side addressed him as Mr. Trump. And, show respect to somebody that's been in the line of fire for the last 10 years since.
They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that to Obama.
Oh, no. Heck no. No, this is all by design. It's just to kind of get under your skin. This has been weaponized. The whole thing was weaponized. And here you got their star witness. He's on TikTok every night, just ripping President Trump. And President Trump can't say a word. I mean, this judge has no control over what's going on in this courtroom other than one guy, and it's Donald Trump.
Senator Tuberville, I know you have to run, so I want to ask one last question of you. Were you encouraged to see Speaker Johnson and some others show up today in support of the president? Would you like to see other lawmakers follow suit? Your example?
I think if anybody's got any opportunity to go, it'd be awesome. Again, for several reasons: show support and then be able to speak on his behalf because he can't say anything. So again, I hope we have more colleagues from both sides of the House and the Senate go. Anybody else that wants to go that knows him that can speak for him. But again, I think it's very important. That we all know the situation we're in our country. The Democrats are running in the ground in every area. There's not anything positive going on, and people are struggling. I mean, struggling. And this goofball Biden, they call it Bidenomics or whatever. I mean, your dollar's worth 74 cents of what it was 3 years ago out of a dollar, 74 cents, and then prices are sky high. So hopefully we run this guy out of there, but we got to get President Trump through the next few weeks, and hopefully we can overcome these next few trials. But again, they're trying to put him in jail and trying to do everything they can to keep him off the ballot.
Well, God bless you for standing up for decency. Senator Tuberville, thank you for your time today, as always. Good to talk to you, sir.
Thank you, Vince. God bless.
Senator Tuberville from the great state of Alabama. Nice to chat with him. He's right about the current state of play. The economy's in very bad shape, thanks to Joe Biden. In fact, there's a new report today that Americans are in more household debt than they've ever been in their entire lives. In the history of our country, we're at record household debt now. In the first 3 months of 2024, total household debt has now surged to a fresh record of $17.69 trillion in the United States of America. That's an increase of $184 billion this quarter, mostly stemming from a jump in mortgage balances, which rose $190 billion from the previous quarter. And that's Fox Business reporting. Auto loan balances also going up by $9 billion. Credit card balances did fall slightly, just $14 billion to $1.12 trillion. Remember, when we crossed the $1 trillion mark for a credit card, that was like, that's a record. We've never been over $1 trillion in credit card debt. And now we are as a country under Joe Biden. And those credit card balances are still sky high. And there's also an ensuing problem. Credit card delinquencies are now on the rise. According to CNBC today, Americans owe a collective $1.12 trillion on their credit cards, as I just cited. In line with typical spending patterns after the peak holiday season, credit card balances did fall a bit in the first quarter, but credit card delinquency rates rose, especially among young adults or borrowers between the ages of 18 and 29 who are burdened by high levels of student loan debt, for educations that didn't give them anything of value, and high costs across the board, the New York Fed found. These Generation Z borrowers also have shorter credit histories and lower credit limits, making them more likely to be maxed out on their credit cards and miss a payment, the researchers found. So here we go. Delinquencies on the rise, credit card debts at record levels, household debts at record levels, from mortgages to auto loans. And the White House and the media keep looking at you with a straight face and saying, oh, no, the economy's great. Everything's fine. Fine? That's not what I'm seeing here. That's not what Americans are seeing in their bank accounts. And Senator Tuberville highlighting that. That's the real problem. And the left realizes that the only way out of this is to cook up some sort of distraction to imprison their political opponents. All right, hold on. I've got an episode of Democrats Say the Darndest Things coming up for you. As a couple of Democrats literally stood in front of microphones and said demented things out loud just in the last 24 hours. Can't wait to share it with you. Mayor Eric Adams, he's a Democrat. He's in New York. His city is on fire. He escaped the city. Was it last week? He flew off to Italy. He had urgent city business. He had to go to Italy. Yeah, me too, Mr. Mayor. I have urgent business. This always works with my wife, too. I've got to go to Italy. I've got urgent matters to attend to. Today, Mayor Eric Adams says that they've got so many illegal aliens in New York that maybe they should become lifeguards because they're great swimmers. I'm sorry. What kind of racist nonsense is this? Take a listen.
Plan that states those jobs that we are in high demand, we could expedite. How do we have a large body of people that are in our city and country that are excellent swimmers, and at the same time we need lifeguards? And the only obstacle is that we won't give them the right to work to become a lifeguard.
And everyone pensively nodding along as he's making naked assumptions about broad categories of people that are excellent swimmers. How do you know that? Have you done swim assessments on all of the illegals? How do you know so much about them? You can't call them undocumented if you've got their swim records. So that's Mayor Eric Adams. Meanwhile, in Maryland, where there's a big old primary going on today, one of the Senate candidates among the Democrats is a guy called David Trone. He's really rich. He's the total wine guy. And he was asked by NBC today how he can distinguish himself among black voters in the state. His opponent, Angela Also Brooks, a black woman. How is he going to stand out against her among black voters? Listen to his answer. He says that that he can relate to black voters because when he was growing up, he didn't have indoor plumbing, and his whole family was destroyed by alcoholism. So he knows what it's like to be black.
Sticking on Elsa Brooks for a second, because you're primarying her right now in these next 2 days. The other thing she said to me was that she's hoping to be the first black woman elected to the Senate from the state of Maryland. There are a lot of black voters in the electorate in Maryland, so how are you doing that outreach to get them on your side?
Yeah, what we hear is voters, and we need diversity, and we always support diversity, and I've supported diverse candidates all over the United States. I'm the largest donor to Democrats in the House and the Senate.
So if you're looking for somebody to blame for all of America's problems, this guy.
So I fully support that, but at the end of the day, what we hear from so many diverse voters is we need someone who actually speaks for us, someone who has our values. I went to public school. She went to private school. Someone that lived the life they did. Didn't even have indoor plumbing. We had an outhouse. And I grew up in a family that was destroyed by alcoholism. Destroyed. So we grew up in a tough circumstance, and things weren't easy. But at the end of the day, we became successful. Then said, okay, now I got to give back.
And that's the story that you believe will resonate and connect you with
clearly,
these voters.
We've been the underdog in this race from day one. The establishment
She's like,
was...
I just want to be sure I understand what you just said. You're saying that because you had an outhouse and a family of alcoholics that you relate to black people. Is that what you're saying to me? Notice he doesn't say black, by the way. He's saying diverse. He keeps saying diverse voters, diverse voters. What does that even mean? Based on the standard of, quote, diversity, white people are diverse voters. They're different color than other people, so therefore that's diverse. What are you talking about? I'm trying to appeal to diverse voters. Okay. With my outhouse story and the alcoholism, Keith Olbermann, who is tragically dumb, tweeted about this audio that I just played for you today. He wrote, breaking, Maryland GOP Senate candidate says he can relate to black voters because he too didn't have indoor plumbing. And then he tweeted the facepalm emoji. Maybe if he took his hand off of his face, he'd be able to tell he was tweeting about a Democrat, not a Republican. He has since deleted the post on X. You know, whatever little sense of shame Keith Olbermann still has, it involves trying to protect Democrats. Coming up, Kate Anderson joins us from the Daily Caller News Foundation with some exclusive reporting on how the left is trying to mutilate our children. Details ahead. Good afternoon to you. 535 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
As my disclosure signed, I'd say that basically not only are the medications off-label, the whole field's off-label, right? But that's all good.
But that's all good. The whole field of gender switching is, quote, off-label, says a doctor who's right at the center of that entire industry, where they claim that people can change their sex, and they are doing all sorts of awful, untested things to children that are permanently ruining their lives, and they know it. They know it. These are the findings of a new investigation done by the Daily Caller News Foundation, looking into the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, known as the leading authority in the field of so-called gender medicine. There's a big tranche of new documents and audio to share with you. It all comes to us courtesy of the work of this reporter, Kate Anderson. She's a reporter for the Daily Caller News Foundation and joins us now. Kate, so good to have you with us.
Hi, Vince. Thanks so much for having me back.
Kate, set this up for us. What have you come into? What have you discovered?
Yeah, so my colleague and I, Megan Brock, at the Daily Caller News Foundation, there was a series of public records requests that were submitted. We were trying to get some more information about WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And what we got back was a document full of almost 30 hours of videos of WPATH's Global Education Institute, and they do this pretty regularly. I want to say it's every 2 years. And that institute is to train doctors and mental health professionals internationally how to implement transgender care according to WPATH's guidelines. So what we got was an inside look at the training, the base training ground for all these doctors across the world. And all of this, again, this trickles down all the way down to your local pediatrician's office. So this is really big stuff.
Yeah, this is huge. I've got some of this audio I want to start sharing and get your reaction to it as we go through it. Here's a WPATH faculty member and a gender doctor that claimed that it doesn't matter what kind of mental health issues somebody has. They should go through sex change surgery. Take a listen.
I hear a lot about psychosis and estrogen, so if you can specifically speak to that and to anything else that might be more than just this person's really unstable, is it a good or bad idea to start, or more data or resources where I could go?
I don't think, so my personal opinion is that this is not a thing for either hormone. I think I would probably frame it, are they mentally stable to go for wisdom tooth extraction right now? Like
no, that's very helpful. The idea of
an elective surgery thing or something where they can both give consent, could cope with an unexpected event that took place on it, responsible enough to do with it.
It's about capacity and self-management. I can assess for that.
Yeah, I think that's where I'd frame that. I don't think it's a hormone thing. Again, most people get happier, which is why we're doing that, which tends to be helpful for mental health.
That's a
lot of laughter there as he says that mental health itself should not be a barrier to sterilizing patients.
Well, and I think that's really telling, the fact that there was just a ton of laughing, and we see that a lot throughout the videos if you watch more of them. But one thing in particular that I want to hit on that he said is, like, you know, when people go on these treatments, they get happier. That's not been the case, and these doctors admit that multiple times. So they, you know, one doctor, Dr. Gail Knudsen, she talks about how, another doctor talks about how if a patient goes through sex change surgery and they have a history of psychosis, so like let's say they have schizophrenia, you know, she recommends that they be taken from the surgical recovery ward and put in the psych ward just as a precaution in case they might have a freak out after the surgery. Another doctor talks about how it would be worse for a patient to start menstruation, so a female who's trying to transition to a male to start menstruation, it would be worse for that as opposed to taking hormones, which could make her psychosis worse. And so doctors, they admit that this is not something that improves mental health. And I think that's something that we really should be paying attention to, because that's the main argument that we've been hearing for years. Yes.
In fact, here's an example. Here's one of the WPATH doctors talking about how he's had children who are his patients with schizophrenia, and how he's had to dial back the testosterone. This would be for girls with schizophrenia. He's dialing back the testosterone on them in order to, quote, keep the voices down from their schizophrenia.
I have had a few kids with schizophrenia who do notice that if they push their testosterone too much, that it seems to them that it makes things a little bit worse. So the patients with schizophrenia are doing well on their meds, and so they will sometimes moderate their dose a little bit just to keep the voices down or whatever their bad symptom is.
This sounds so evil to me, Kate. They're talking about it so casually that you have basically patients with severe mental health problems, and they're injecting them with artificial chemicals.
Yeah, that video actually was one of probably the most disturbing to me, just because, I mean, if you think about it, like, schizophrenia is a serious illness. It's also pretty rare, but there is actually a lot of crossover between patients who are diagnosed with gender dysphoria and patients who are diagnosed with schizophrenia. It's very high. And doctors are researching that. But yeah, like what he's talking about, it's incredibly serious. You have these poor young girls who are struggling with something so serious, and he doesn't say that he is reducing their dose. He's saying they have to moderate their own dose. And so that they're having to do that. He's giving stuff to them, and then he's saying they moderate their dose in order to keep the voices down. I mean, I can't even imagine that, or like their parents, knowing that your child is on something and that could be making the voices worse. And to be so cavalier about it is disturbing. Cavalier is a good way to describe the attitudes of most of the people that you've captured in these videos, or that were captured in these videos that you've obtained. Among them is a WPATH doctor called Scott Leibovitz,
who talks about how these children are being pushed to make life-altering decisions. And they basically go with, if the kid seems to kind of feel good with it, that's good enough for them. They're not going to stop them after that. Take a listen.
But an adolescent who says, I'm just going to adopt, leave me alone, is different than an adolescent who says, I don't really care about this right now, but I realize I'm a teenager. Maybe when I'm older, I could change my mind, but I don't think I will. That shows, that second group shows that that adolescent is capable of understanding that they don't know what their life may be like. That's the type of young person that is, understands that their decisions that they're making now are impacting them, and they could be appropriate for their future, or they might not be. And it's not up to us to say, well, if your thing is going to change in time, if your priorities change in time, well, then we shouldn't do this. No, it's to say, great, you understand that. Now let's move forward with what you feel you need.
That audio, what he just said is he's absolving himself of guilt for the future damage that's going to take place for these kids, because these kids he's basically saying, look, the kid thought about it. They came up with a decision. So if they're infertile, if they can't have children, if their lives are destroyed going forward, not my problem.
Well, and to say you as the adult, as the doctor, as the quote-unquote expert, to sit there and say, it's not my job to tell the kid no, when it comes to a risky procedure. No, that's precisely your job. Like, you are the one who is the, again, quote-unquote expert in this field, and so it is your job. And just like you said, Vince, like he's absolving himself of responsibility. And to suggest that a child who says, yeah, I could regret this later, but I want this now, like, what child doesn't say that? They're immediate beings. They want things now, and they want things fixed now, because they have no concept of the future or what they could want, because they're children.
Yeah.
That's why we don't let children make big decisions. That's why they have parents. So yeah, just the fact that that's his threshold for consent, it's wild.
It's horrifying. Here's another one for you. A WPATH doctor talking about something called phalloplasties. This is the creation of artificial, fake male genitals for girls, usually crafted from the skin on their forearm. They remove skin from the forearm and they make it look like a simulated male genital, and then they attach it to the girl. It's unbelievable what they're doing to these girls. And here's a doctor saying that it's merely an adventure. They're embarking on an adventure, like it's like some fun event.
Is there a higher incidence of phalloplasties now than 10 years ago?
Definitely. Not to the level of reaching the incidence of vaginoplasty, but we're seeing more phalloplasties, yes. And young individuals. Yeah, they're ready to embark on the adventure. I tell them, it's going to be an adventure, and we're both together in there, because we have to get to your goals, but there's going to be a few bumps along the way, right? I mean, there could be delays because of complications. Definitely there will be complications, either it's stenosis, fistulas, or partial necrosis, wound healing delays and stuff like that.
What's the average length of time from the surgery?
For 3 stages, it's at least probably a year to a year and a half is the very least you can expect.
In order to create a simulated genital for the girl. So here in this audio, I noticed a couple things, but one of them is that they talk in these euphemisms. They make it seem like this is fun. They use words like adventure. Is that a feature of these videos, that they all talk like this?
Yeah, it's weird because they do it to a point. Sometimes they're really almost scarily blatant about what they're talking about, and then other times, yeah, they use a lot of these euphemisms like adventure, but like when he's referring to adventure, it's like, why would you describe complications such as tissue death, which is what he's saying there, like tissue necrosis, tissue death from trying to make a penis out of a vagina. Why would you say that is an adventure, or it's just a few bumps along the way? An average surgery to get a genital reconstruction surgery like that, it's going to take at least a year to a year and a half, at least. And he says there, you are pretty much guaranteed to have complications. So what part of that is an adventure? And it's just, again, like the word I used before, they're just very, very cavalier about something that is so serious, and that we have seen, as detransitioners have come out, it is incredibly harmful to these young people that are my peers. This is my generation.
Yeah. Kate Anderson, another piece of audio here addresses something that the left often says. They often claim in public that children who are put in puberty blockers, that's a reversible situation. Once you go on puberty blockers, it's fine. It just delays puberty for a bit, but it's reversible. No harm, no foul. That's not what these gender industry people say behind closed doors. Here's WPATH Dr. Scott Leibowitz talking about puberty blockers.
There's challenges with puberty suppression that we have to acknowledge. And that's why it's reversible asterisk. One cannot be on puberty suppression endlessly. And clinically, I can tell you it's a challenging issue when you start a kid on puberty suppression and then they want to stay on puberty suppression because they don't want to even make decisions about either of the two hormones. And then you get to a place where physiologically we need hormones. And was I joking with you in the break about there's no such thing as non-binary osterone? Sadly, the hormones are binary. Okay, so
science exists.
There's other challenges, and I see some talks on the schedule in the upcoming meeting, particularly for the trans feminine population. If one suppresses puberty and doesn't allow genital development to take place, certain surgeons have indicated that can be a challenge if the adolescent ultimately desires gender-affirming surgery, lower surgery when they're older.
Ugh.
Now, you try having that conversation with a parent of an 11-year-old about their child's future maybe orgasm. And so you can see how complicated this is, and that's why I think when we just say, oh, puberty blockers, it's just reversible, and we just, it's a very non-invasive treatment, I would say it's more invasive than oftentimes like the media makes it out to be or other people.
Well, the admission he's making is in the service of future sex change surgery. So it's still a demented goal. But here you have him admitting, this Dr. Scott Leibowitz, admitting something that you never hear the left say in public, which is that puberty blockers can have irreversible damaging effects on the kids that they're applied to.
Well, and it's really interesting because, again, this is a WPATH training conference, and WPATH's own guidelines that were released just days prior to this claim that puberty-blocking medication administered to children that show the first signs of physical changes is fully reversible. And then he's saying, well, they're reversible asterisk. And, you know, we had the CAS review come out a month ago or so, and showing that, like, puberty blockers, there are a lot more effects to this that either we don't know about fully or that we do know about that are extremely concerning. And so you've got England and Scotland who are pulling back and completely cutting off their programs. And I believe it was Dr. Cass today saying that, you know, the U.S. is kind of behind when it comes to gender-affirming care, not in the sense that they need to speed it up, but that almost like they're going too fast.
Yes.
And this is the kind of stuff that she's talking about. It's like, you know, and I think it's important to note, Leibowitz and WPATH knew this 2 years ago. The CAS review came out this year. So this was well known that this wasn't really reversible years ago. And yet, what have we been hearing for the last 2 years, Vince? That it is reversible. That, oh, anybody who says otherwise is making that up. That it's just fear-mongering. Well, that doesn't appear to be the case.
No, not at all. There is a massive, there's so much audio I couldn't even get to because we're talking about many, many, many hours of content here, all obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation. Kate Anderson, one of the reporters on the byline there, an excellent scoop. And for anybody who wants more information on this, you should definitely check out their work. Kate, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and we'll have you back again soon. Joe Biden announced a bunch of new tariffs on China today. You know, 2 decades after he opened the floodgates and allowed China to destroy American jobs everywhere, he's like, oh, maybe I could add some tariffs on them now. Here's what Biden was saying about tariffs back in 2020.
Iowa farmers have been crushed by his tariff war with China, and no one knows better than the folks in Iowa. He thinks that being tough is great. Well, it's really easy to be tough when someone else absorbs the pain.
And guess what he's saying today?
That's why today I'm announcing new tariffs in key sectors of the economy that are going to ensure that our workers are not held back by unfair trade practices.
Yeah, he's nothing if not a complete and total liar. You know, in case you're wondering. Hey, you know who tells the truth? Our good friend, the great one, Mark Levin, up next right here on the legendary WMAL. Make sure to get the Vince Coglianese Show podcast. It's available in the podcast app, whatever that is on your phone.